But first, we're going to turn our attention to a racing legend, a NASCAR legend, a legend of America, and someone who is a winner of the Presidential Medal of Freedom. That's the highest civilian honor you can get. He has 200 victories in NASCAR. Nobody else has even close to that. He's won 7 Winston Cups, and he's just a fantastic person. It does a lot of good for the community, and we're going to talk about that. Let you meet Richard Petty. Welcome.
Glad to be here.
Good to see you.
Glad to be back.
Yeah, I'm going to explain to the folks that this particular segment was taped ahead of time, and Richard was in the air from Detroit, he and Kyle, and you just barely made it in here, right?
We got here, though.
All right, before we get to talking about anything else, I got to say something. Martha Jane, who looks after you there at your place, you know, for years, your assistant and good friend, I was telling her directions to get you to the station. And I said, well, now if he gets lost, tell him just to get on the cell phone and I'll talk him into it. And what do you think she said?
No telling.
But you don't have a cell phone.
I don't have a cell phone.
Why is that?
Because they can find me.
They can find where you are.
They can find out.
Well, now why is it now? Now wait a minute. I'm confused on the races. You know that you see these race car guys, and you're talking to people in the pits, and you're talking on things the whole time you're driving, but you won't talk to me when you're on the I-40.
That's a little bit different.
Right.
Okay. That's strictly business deal. 2/3 of the talking on the telephone, if not 90%, is just how's the weather, how's things going. You know, instead of saying, you know, yeah. I'm asking you where am I at and where do I need to go. Now that's okay.
Yeah, right.
But the majority of the time it's just a bunch of chatter, and I don't have time to miss.
I don't know where I am half the time anyway. Look, there's you and Mr. Bassett of Bassett Furniture and Bob Timberlake, our good buddy Bob Timberlake, had a press conference not too long ago.
Yeah, we had the furniture mart.
Yeah, now tell me about what this whole North Carolina jobs thing is about. What prompted you to get in on that?
Well, I was sort of sitting there, I think. No, we've done a bunch of different things like this, and what they were trying to do was put together a program and come back to the people that powers that be to say, okay, you know, we don't need to lose the furniture industry out of North Carolina. What can they do and to keep the cheap stuff coming in or going to China or get it done, whatever it is. And I told them, I said, okay, I'm right in the middle of the same thing with you because of the racing part.
Right.
We just started up a organization, North Carolina Motorsports Association, that is doing the same thing to try to protect racing. The general people don't know how much racing brings to North Carolina.
Yeah.
You know, 90% of the teams are here, 2 or 3 tracks. And so we bring in billions of dollars into the economy that people don't really understand.
Right, and you don't want
we're trying to protect that because we've had people from South Carolina and people from Tennessee come in and say, hey, if you'll move your team, we'll give you, you know, X amount of land here and not charge you a whole lot of taxes.
Big incentives.
All that stuff.
Well, you know what's on people's mind recently, talking about it, and I'm serious now about incentives. Georgia is trying to get Disney folks to make the Richard Petty movie in Georgia instead of in North Carolina. Now, what's that all about?
Well, that's the same thing. Georgia came in and said, okay, we'll give you some tax incentives, you know, if you'll bring this program to Georgia. And so now it's up to North Carolina. They know what Georgia's bid.
But that's a lot of millions of dollars.
Yeah, well, you know, it'd probably be $3 or $4 million just on the tax deal. But it's going to be like a $75 million movie.
Right.
So they'll spend probably $30 to $40 million in the location. So that's be $30 or $40 million in the economy of North Carolina.
Can you muscle Disney at all to say, hey, we need to shoot this in North Carolina?
No, I can muscle them into the deal till it comes to the money. I can't muscle the money. I mean, if somebody comes up and said, okay, I'm going to give you a couple million or $3 million, then it's hard for me to combat that.
What's it going to take to keep it here, do you think?
Well, all they got to do is just match anything or come close to whatever anybody else is going to do. Disney itself wants to do it here.
Right.
But then they have to look at the economics and say, okay, and that's what North Carolina needs to look at, you know, in the furniture part,
right.
In our racing deal, in the movie part. I just happened to have got here with all 3 different things at one time.
Right.
But they need to look at the economy because, you know, we've lost a lot of the textile. To the tobacco industry is, you know, just getting killed because of the whatever.
Right.
And you know, and that's where North Carolina came from. And then the furniture deal is probably 3rd on the list as far as North Carolina. Of course, I guess tourist is the most, but those 3 products, and that's the reason we came with a racing deal, was saying, okay, you know, we was way down the totem pole, but if you eliminate these guys here, all of a sudden,
Right.
racing is going to be a big industry.
You know, 43, the Petty story was made back in the early 70s. You played yourself in a movie.
Yeah, we made it, but it was made a lot in Randolph County.
Right,
so,
right.
But
Well,
it was kind of a low budget.
Well, who would you want to play you in this movie?
Well, you know.
How about me?
I don't know about that now. You try the glasses and the hat and see how you do. But, you know, I hadn't got in on that part of it. In fact, they hadn't, I guess they've been talking about it, but they haven't got a complete script as far as I'm concerned. I think they've sent 7 or 8.
Right.
We kept sending them back, and they keep redoing it. But they want to start this thing up in, you know, March or April and start shooting.
Pretty
so
quick.
Don't take long.
Just a couple serious racing questions and safety questions that I want to throw out to you. Then we'll take a commercial break, and we're going to spend some time talking about Victory Junction Camp for the kids, which is a great topic. But some things have been in the news and about safety. Humpy Wheeler said not too long ago, and for those at home that don't know, the great owner of the Lowe's Motor Speedway, he was interviewed on a little radio show. It didn't really catch the news or anything, but he said that somebody said, Humpy, what should we do to improve NASCAR? He said, well, one thing I'd like to see is to slow these cars down. And I think about you and your family and the Earnhardts and other families and people who have had some tragedy in their life, people even in the general walk of life, general public that have had tragedies in their lives due to some element of speed on the road. What do you think about Humpy's suggestion, and would that work?
Well, I guess it would work, because if you go back to when I first started, we was running a racetrack at 100 mile an hour. Now they're running the same racetrack at 150 mile an hour. But you got to figure, if you look back, how much safer the cars and the drivers are because of the safety equipment around the racetrack and in the race car. My father started the very first Winston Cup race there was in 1949. He had a helmet and a seat belt. That was the only, I mean, it was a stock car.
Yeah.
They didn't even bolt the doors shut.
Right.
And then first thing you know, they turned something over and the doors come off, so they started bolting them, and then the wheels come off, and they just kept improving and making safeties. Then in 1953, my father came with a Dodge that had without a post in it, like a hardtop
Right,
convertible.
right.
He put a roll bar in it. They was about not letting him run. But then they finally said, okay, you know, we need a post. So that was the first roll bar. So then somebody said, well, we need a little bit more bar, a little bit more of
Right.
this. And today the cars are pretty safe.
You think they're safe?
Well,
All right.
nothing is ever safe.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, you know, John Glenn fell in the bathtub after going around the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He falls in the bathtub and about kills himself, so nothing's safe.
Well, when we come back after this quick break, we're going to talk about Victory Junction Gang Camp for special kids. It's special work that the King is doing.